That's right. Welcome in Judd's Hockey Show, which is back in a weird sort of way, Declan Goff, because the hockey season is over, so it gives us a window of opportunity to talk about Wild-related and hockey-related transactions that might be coming here soon. The Tampa Bay Lightning are a juggernaut, back-to-back Stanley Cup championships. They beat Montreal, 4-1 in their Stanley Cup final series. And you know what that series did again, Declan Goff? You know what it reminded us of?
Manipulation because of salary cap?
Oh, that too. That's a good one. Which, by the way, closed the loophole.
Yeah.
The salary cap has to apply to the
dumbest
playoffs.
Things
How do you not apply the salary cap to the playoffs?
Oh, God. Dude.
Hey, once the playoffs hit, it's free game. Bring in anyone you want. Bring in re-sign Gretzky for all the National Hockey League cares. No, it reminds us of this, Declan Goff.
Okay.
Beware of rooting for the underdog story. Because the Montreal Canadiens, by the time they got to the finals, were not nearly as much fun as the Golden Knights might have been, for instance.
Yeah.
Like, they just weren't.
Yeah, right.
They played really well. Yeah, exactly.
Would have been a better series.
And we probably saw the finals more with, like, Colorado, Vegas.
Yep.
But, I mean, Montreal was so spent, and they really weren't that good. Like, it's a good story, but they weren't that good.
It was Carey Price.
That series was not fun to watch, really.
No, I mean, you knew that going in. You know, I wanted my Isles to win it in Game 7 against Tampa, but Tampa's a juggernaut.
Yeah.
And it would have been a lot more fun to see Vegas there. I think Wild fans would have been a lot more pissed off because now there's just vigorol and vinegar with the Vegas Golden Knights because they are buying the referees. But, you know, hockey season's over. Now we got a full slate of, we got actually more of a jam-packed offseason because it's shorter. But I mean, what, Judd? We're literally 8 weeks from training camp. Or so, give or less, you know, a little more. Because
we'll be back in September
right?
with training camps, and then the regular season will start in early October, and it will be a go. All right, let's get to the primary subject that's going to be triggered immediately now by the end of the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah,
that is the fact that the National Hockey League's first buyout window opens 24 hours after the Stanley Cup is awarded, which was obviously late last night, and then closes at 4 p.m. on July 27th. And this is important because if you are watching Judd's Hockey Show right now, you can see this on the screen. This opens up the opportunity, which will, I would guess, start late tonight then and probably take off tomorrow in the AM.
Yep.
And we are recording this on Thursday for a potential Zach Parise buyout. Now, I think Bill Guerin has stated publicly, and I don't think he's lying, that buyouts are not something he subscribes to and or likes because it's basically you eat a contract and it can cause problems, and I get that. And you certainly don't want to make buyouts the rule of your team. Like, you don't want to be buying out guys left and right. That being said, Declan, and we could certainly get into the financial implications of this topic as well.
Yeah.
I don't see any way around buying out Parise, because I think a trade would be incredibly difficult to make because, I mean, I know that he came back and played okay and had, 3 goals and something like 4 points in the playoffs, but he was scratched for, the first 3 games, a healthy scratch in the playoffs. I don't know how much a team is going to desire to trade for him. My guess is that desire would be very small, and I don't see any way that he can come back here and play with certainly the animosity that built up from him being a healthy scratch and, quite frankly, embarrassed in the playoffs. So unless I'm missing something here, I got to think a buyout is probably, it might not be the most palatable or best option, but it's the best option both sides probably have.
No, it is the best option. I literally think it's the best option. I don't think you can trade him without giving away a first-round pick as a sweetener, without giving away something as in, hey, take this, bad apple off our hands, if you will. If he retires early, the Wild still get hit. I think, unfortunately, and I don't like buyouts either. They did it with Mark Parrish. They did it with Thomas Vanek. It lingers for a long time. They did it with Matt Cook. There's been examples, Tyler Ennis, that there's always been dead money against this team for basically the last 15 years. And this one would extend it through 2029, by the way. So we would have a buyout on the books for the rest of this decade if they bought out Zach Parise.
Yep.
And I just think it's the most logical option to do. I know he came in and he scored and he had a little fire under his belly, whatever you want to call it. He scored some goals. I don't look at that series and think if Zach played in the first 3 games, it's any different than what the outcome was. The way the NHL is trending, the way this team is trending, I don't see where Zach fits in. Like, I don't know how you take away from that series and what the Wild accomplished in the shortened 56-game season and say, well, I think Zach Parise fits into that. I don't. I really don't. So I think a buyout is the most logical thing to do.
Yeah, he's not getting quicker. He is a guy who, and this is actually credit to him, because of the way he has played his career, is breaking down. And the other thing for anyone who says, well, look at how he came in the playoffs and produced like you're talking about, the problem there is the brain trust, Bill Guerin, Evason, scratched him as healthy for 3 games. So that's their statement. Like, it doesn't matter what we think. We could be the biggest Parise stans, I do love that word, in the world and say, oh, but look at what he did. Look at what he did. And they're going to say, yeah, but we scratched him. And they scratched him because they didn't think that he fit. And so bringing him back to me is not an option, because what's going to happen? You're going to bring him back. You're going to scratch him more. The animosity that builds up is going to actually increase if that's possible.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, Zach is still a guy in that locker room who is popular with a lot of players. So the more you scratch him, the more they're going to look sideways at things. And I'm sure he's not going to just shut up and not say a word about it internally. So, number one, to me, you can't bring him back. Mm-hmm. You just can't. And once they decided to scratch him for the playoffs, that genie out of the bottle. So that's done. Option 2 would be a trade, but who's going to take on the contract? Like, no one's going to take that contract, right?
Right.
And so, like, you could say, well, we'll give him to you, basically. And a team is going to say, we'll take him, and then you're going to pay a bunch of the contract, and you're going to be like, well, we don't want to do that. So, yeah, the buyout, which, by the way, the report that I found here says the Wild can enjoy a $5.2 million savings next season before Parise's cap hit jumps up again for each of the next 3 years due to the nature of his back diving deal, which was, what, $833,000? Is that correct, on a yearly basis? So
essentially, you'll save the bulk of the money this summer. You'd save 5.2. The next year, it's 1.6. And then the next, that's my math here, next 6 years of that deal, you're saving chump change. There's a little negative penalty towards the last 3 years, but it's like $800,000. It's not something that, I mean, over time, if you add it all up, 800 times 5 is, that's a few $1 million, but mostly I think it makes the most sense instead of paying him $7 million. So I think it makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
it makes a ton of sense. And the Wild is now entering a window as well, which I think started to open up in 2020-21. But the Wild now has expectations as well. So, like, you can't afford anything that potentially derails those expectations. And if Zach Parise is not part of the expectations, which I don't believe that he is, Dex, from a management standpoint, it's not like you can afford to have him be a bad apple and unhappy on this team. You've got too many young players. You've come way too far. Like, you think about how Bill Guerin's changed things, right? Which has been a big part of this platform.
Yes.
So you can't just have Zach and be there and be unhappy and be disgruntled and be like, well, that's okay for now. There's not one day of the 2021-22 season, in my opinion, that you can afford to have a former star player be as unhappy as Parise would be because they don't want to pay the price of a buyout.
If you have trust in what Bill Guerin is building here and what he's built so far, and this is really the biggest offseason of his tenure so far, and he's done a pretty damn good job, in my opinion, and then you're upset that he moves on from Zach Parise, well, I have a pretty good trust in what he wants to do here. I'm not trying to say he won't be at fault and he'll make a dumb decision here and there, because no executive or head coach is perfect. But I have a lot of trust in what is being built here. And if he believes Zach Parise, if this team is better without Zach Parise, then I'm going to default to him. Now, you and I love to rip people that are smarter than us and better than us, that are more athletic than we'll ever even dream of. And that's the beauty of what you and I get to do every day. But I have a lot of trust in what he's building here. And if you're irked by the fact that they're moving on from a 36-year-old guy who's clearly past his prime, clearly an albatross on you building something special, and is going to be a problem with him complaining in the room, well, like what are you really arguing for? What do you argue that because he's Minnesota and he's Zach Parise and he's number 11? Is that
you think he can still be Zach Parise, which he can't be?
He can't. Ryan Suter's game hasn't fallen off a cliff yet. Ryan Suter's game could fall on a cliff. Could start this season. We don't know. I don't think it will, but it could. This team is so much better off without him. And what we saw in the shortened 56 games, I don't know how you can come to the conclusion that where Zach then fits into it. I don't see how that works out to me.
And Bill Guerin keeping Zach would fly in the face of everything Bill Guerin has done. Everything. Because he is, again, he has worked incredibly hard to do what Paul Fenton started, which is pick the roster apart, because the roster, it's not that they were bad human beings and it's not that they weren't good players, but as a whole, it didn't work. The puzzle never fit together. And to take the next step, which I think the Wild is in the process right now of doing. Like, I like where they're going. I like them. But to take that next step, you can't have a guy who's going to sit in the corner of the locker room who was once great. And look, it's flat out going to cause a division. It's going to cause, if you bring him back, there's going to be the faction of the team, right? That's like, we love Zach. Why is Zach not playing? And Zach's going to talk to them. And then there's going to be the faction of, oh my God, move on. So yeah, I think the buyout is really, unless there's something that I'm missing here from a trade standpoint, I don't think I am, the buyout is the only realistic option. Joel Eriksson Ek, my man. Joel Eriksson Ek. I have been surprised that this actually got as much attention from a negative standpoint. Not attention, but the negative attention it got. Last Friday, as we began the 4th of July weekend, signs an 8-year, which thanks to the Parise and Suter contracts is now the max contract that you can sign to go back to your team. He was a restricted free agent. Eriksson Ek, 8 years, $42 million. Your thoughts?
Okay, well, first off, I do understand the vigor of a max deal for Joel Eriksson Ek, just from the standpoint of when you think max deal, and when I'm saying max deal, I'm thinking max of the term. How long is he being signed for? It's a hard case to make. There are not many players you would sign to 8-year max deals. Joel Eriksson Ek does not strike me as the guy who I would first think of to sign a max deal. Mm-hmm. So I do understand that cause for concern. The thing is he has a very affordable cap hit, in my opinion, of 5.2. If this was 6 or 7, I would have pushback. There is no movement clause built in, and I believe there is one, like in year 4, at least a limited one, Michael Russo reported. So there is a possible stipulation for a no movement, or at least a limited one in like year 4 of no trade of this contract.
Yes.
I could understand
like
if it
Dumba
was
has now. Yes.
If it was an ironclad Zuccarello, no movement.
Oh yeah.
I would be pissed.
Agreed.
I'd be a lot more upset.
Agreed on that. Complete no move.
But he blossomed last year. He finally got rewarded for a lot more goals. You asked me in the preseason what player finally starts waking up and scoring more goals, and I said it's going to be Joel Eriksson Ek just because he's in front of the net a lot more. He does a lot of good things, and he's going to get rewarded. Hockey's one of those sports where if you do all these little things right, eventually the breaks start going for you. And he scored 19 goals last season. He shot the puck more than he ever did. Shooting percentage was a little high, but he plays all facets of the game. I know there's a lot of people who believe he can still be like a top line center. I don't buy that. I think he's a very good player. What that line did with Greenway and Foligno was a very efficient and productive and needed line for any deep hockey team. I think in general, he still slides in as best case scenario as the second line center on a good team. And he's more likely a very good third line center on any team. And if you're going to get basically over 82 game pace, he was damn near a 30 goal scorer. Well, that's it. Like that. I mean, that's the ceiling of him. And there could be some regression there. I understand, but in general, he finally woke up, and we kind of, I think, finally realized, the Brock Besser comparison, this isn't as bad as we thought it was going to be.
Yep.
Unfortunately, I said to you numerous times on previous podcasts that we're going to be linking those two probably forever. And I think we'll probably have those two in a similar conversation for the durations of their NHL careers. But that missed pick or that misevaluation, if you will, from the 2015 draft doesn't look as glaring if you're getting this version of Joel Eriksson Ek. So I think the contract is fine. Look, we're trying to find another one, and you have one here in Joel Eriksson Ek, and I think it was the right deal to make.
I agree completely. And I actually, so the term did surprise me at first. Like the biggest thing for me to digest was not the financial figure, but it was the term, because 8 years is the max, and you're like, oh my God, that's a max contract. You know, it's a max contract in terms of the length of the deal. But think about it this way, okay? It's actually a fairly genius structure from the Wild's people in this. Yes, it's 8 years, but one, he plays a premium position. Centers are very hard to find. Very hard to find. The Wild is knows this well. They're trying right now to find more of them. So I'm with you. I think he can be a second line guy. He plays a premium position. And here's where the contract to me makes the most sense. The cap hit per year, $5.25 million, okay? Keep in mind, the cap for a while now, despite the fact this league has a new TV deal with 2 U.S. partners, this is something I'm confusing me a little bit.
Yeah.
The cap is going to remain, because of the pandemic, this is the sorriest excuse to do it, it's going to remain flat for quite a few years, right?
No, I think, Judd, I think it's just for the next 2 seasons.
Okay, for 2 years.
For 2 years.
But the point is, they've got a new TV deal now, so it could have gone up next year a little bit. But long story short, $5.25 million across the board. If Ek is as effective as we think he can be, and by the way, his goal scoring can go down. He's a 200-foot player. He needs to improve himself in the face-off circle. I will say that. But just as far as what he brings, as far as being a nuisance, right? Teams hate him, which is outstanding. He plays a full-ice 200-foot game. He reminds you in some ways, as far as the responsibilities that he picks up, of Koivu, who, by the way, in his prime, to be clear, was damn good.
Yes.
In fact, I don't think Ek is as good as Koivu, which I think you said a couple days ago. But I do think he's a good player. But anyway, if there's regression in goals and points, potentially, that doesn't mean he's become a bad player. I like the cost certainty here because of the position. If he was a left wing or something, I might say, that might be a little dicey. But I think Joel Eriksson Ek, for quite a while here, is going to be an effective player, and it's not like he's breaking your bank. So I would say don't be as focused on the term, the 8 years, as the financial figure, which is pretty damn fair here. And I think that this is a good investment for a guy who, unless he gets hurt, for probably the next 5 years or so, you're pretty certain of what you're going to get effort-wise. Mm-hmm. You're pretty certain of what he's going to be. And you know what? If he scores, great. But keep in mind, too, for a long time now, he's going to be the guy that you use against the McKinnons, the McDavids, and far more important than his point total is their point total against you. So I like this move.
Yeah, me too. And look, he's Diet Mikko. There's similarities in their games. They both play 200 feet. They both can play penalty kill. I know Joel Eriksson Ek didn't play a ton on the power play, but he started to play more last year. I expect him to play more on the power play this season. Agreed. I think Mikko in his prime is a more, and just in kind of in general for the most part, was a more naturally gifted player than Joel Eriksson Ek. Just in terms of the puck, just in terms of creating offense, he was more naturally gifted than Joel Eriksson Ek. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people, there's a misconception that Mikko, because he was a defensive first forward, he was extremely limited offensive. That was not true. I think
the end was ugly. The end was bad. You're right.
His prime,
he's good.
2008 to 2014-15,
you're right.
He was a damn good center and had the ability, Angry Mikko, as he was coined, could take over a game. You noticed that. I don't know if Joel Eriksson Ek will get to that level and that mindset necessarily. Mindset, yes. Actually, skill, I don't know. But you need a player like this. And if he can develop a little bit more and start scoring more goals and putting himself in good position, I think he's a damn good center. And he was a 4th place in Selke voting last year. If you just look at...
He could win a Selke.
He could win a Selke. I mean, if you just look at previous Selke winners, Barkov, Cordier, O'Reilly, Kopitar, Bergeron, Anzi, Kopitar, I don't know if he's going to be able to be that damn good because those players are, you could make a case, are some of the best centers at their position, but he can be one step below them. And yes, I can see him winning a Selke. He's a good player, and they locked him up, and I think it was the right thing to do.
Nick Bjugstad back on a 1-year, $900,000 deal.
Yeah.
I saw a little bit of pushback on this one. You know what? He can play some center. He can play some wing. I certainly don't love him, but for this salary, I think it's absolutely fine. And you know what? So I think that Dino, to start last year, expected a little too much from Bjugstad, and he was probably given opportunities that he wasn't going to thrive at. But I thought by the end that he was doing a pretty good job in the role that he was asked to play. I think this is the type of role player that you need, and he's not going to be a standout. I don't expect it. But as far as a bottom six guy goes, I don't think he's going to kill you. I think it's just fine.
You can't, honestly, this drives me nuts.
Do you think you're going to get stars here, or what's the...
You can't get upset at a guy signing a $900,000 contract, like especially 1 year. If you're pulling your hair out over re-signing a guy because you're seeing, he had like 17 points and he was basically an interchangeable bottom six guy, like you said, Dino tried him out as like the top line center on opening night,
was a mistake,
which was a mistake from the get-go.
Yes.
He's a versatile bottom six dude. He started blocking more shots. I think he knows who he's going to be. The guy who he was out of the U of M in those first couple years in Florida where he was scoring a lot, injuries piled up, and also I don't mean to rip him for this, and I've heard this from other people from the U and from other hockey smart guys, that I just don't think he wants to be the best. And I don't mean that in a poor way, by the way. I don't mean that as in he doesn't care about hockey.
Yeah.
I don't think he wants to, he knows who he's going to be now, is what I'm trying to say. He's still 28 years old. He's not going to be a frontline center and be the dominant player he was at the U of M in those early days in Florida. But if he can be a bottom six guy who can be a center or a wing, block a ton of shots, throw his weight around. He's a big cat. He's 6'6", 200 plus pounds, man.
Can't fight, but he's big.
Yeah, he's a big guy. And if I'm okay with someone signing a 1 year $900,000 contract.
Do we think that? But I mean, is it the thought process that they should have got him for cheaper, or the thought process that they should have waited the market out to get somebody that you think's better? Because I mean, yeah. The Nick Bjugstads are the Nick Bjugstads.
The latter. I don't
think you're going to find one where he scores 25 goals.
I don't get too upset with finding bottom six forwards that are making chump change and they know who they are. That's why we like Ryan Hartman so much. No, Ryan Hartman played elevated minutes because of necessity.
But he knows who he is.
But he knows who he is.
Yep.
And you never know. I mean, you could make a case that maybe Nick Bjugstad's on the Ryan Hartman trajectory, a former first-round pick who probably wasn't going to be as good as he thought he was, but could have a role in this league for a long time.
Ryan Hartman, the difference there is Ryan Hartman wants it more. Bjugstad,
I agree.
Going back to Bjugstad's time with the Gophers, even to go back that far, because I covered him in quite a few games back then, he always looked the part, like you thought, oh my God, this guy's going to dominate. Yeah. And he could at times in college, but there were a lot of times he didn't. And I think he's just wired as who he is, which isn't, he's a talented dude, but I also don't think he has the cliche, the killer instinct.
Yes.
And Hartman probably does, because if he didn't, he's not in the league. Bjugstad probably gets by on a little bit of talent, but he does have to work, and that's a consistency problem there. I think the two biggest problems that Bjugstad developed as his career, as he spent more time as a pro, the two problems he developed were his desire at times and injury. But I'm with you, Dex. 1 year, $900,000. It's absolutely fine. And I mean, if he makes it, he makes it. If he doesn't, he doesn't. But it was just, I saw the pushback on that, and I'm like, do people really think that you're just going to go out and Nick Bjugstad, we're going to replace him with whom?
Yeah, he was throwing more hits around. He was starting in the defensive zone a ton more. Like I said, I think he has a nice role as a bottom six guy. And if you're not overpaying for that, I understand if you're giving 4 to 5 year deals for bottom six. Then let's have a conversation of wasting money. But that's not the case with Nick Bjugstad.
Cap Friendly, by the way, has the Wild right now with $15.9 million in cap space, which brings us to our final topic.